The Miami Herald reports Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta is out of the running to be Attorney General following the paper's bombshell report. The paper chronicles the case of Jeffrey Epstein, a politically connected multimillionaire hedge fund manager from Palm Beach, Florida. Epstein was accused of assembling a large cult-like network of underage girls to coerce into having sex acts at his waterfront mansion. He could have faced life in prison if convicted. But according to the Herald, the U.S. prosecutor on the case, current Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta, gave Epstein a sweetheart deal called a non-prosecution agreement. Epstein only served 13 months in the county jail, and the FBI investigation into Epstein was essentially shut down. And now a new civil trial set for next week could reveal more about Epstein's alleged sex abuse. Epstein is suing the lawyer who represented his victims, Bradley Edwards. The Herald reports the case involves Epstein and Edwards, whom Epstein had accused of legal misdeeds in representing several victims. Julie Brown is the investigative reporter who wrote the articles. Julie joins me now from Miami. Julie, thank you so much for being with us. This case between Epstein and attorney Bradley Edwards, what more can you tell us about that? Because it would seem to someone, after having read your article, it would seem to most people that Epstein would want to keep as low a profile as possible now. Why invite renewed scrutiny by suing this lawyer?
Well, he actually sued him quite a few years ago. He alleged that Mr. Edwards, when he was representing some of the underage girls who accused Epstein of molesting them, that Edwards used some wrongful tactics in trying to get money from him during these civil cases. Specifically, at the time, Edwards worked in a law firm where a convicted Ponzi schemer, Scott Rothstein, had tried to sell some of these civil settlements that he knew were coming the law firm's way. And eventually Rothstein went to prison for it. But Epstein decided to sue Brad Edwards, saying he knew about the scheme when Edwards did not know about the scheme. This was something that Rothstein, it's a very tangled lawsuit, but essentially what's happening this week is that Edwards is actually countersued Epstein. So this suit is really Edwards suing Epstein. And what he's saying is Epstein, this is a malicious prosecution, and he hopes that in order to prove that it was a malicious prosecution, that some of these girls' testimony, these victims who will be allowed to testify in this case, that more details about Epstein's sex operation will be revealed in the course of this trial.
And Julie, what can you tell us about a second lawsuit? Because many of these girls who are now women feel that justice was not served. Can Epstein be prosecuted again?
I mean, it depends on how you look at it. He probably cannot be prosecuted on the charges that he already pleaded. He already pleaded guilty to this a decade ago, and he served his 13 months in a county jail, a very comfortable situation for him because he was in a private wing and he had his own valet picking him up every day, and he really didn't spend much time in the cell at all. But he served his time. But what could happen is, as the new information has come forward, they could reopen another case against him in New York, for example. There's allegations. There's 2 lawsuits open in New York against him, so involving similar allegations. So there could be another prosecution somewhere along down the line, especially if more girls who are now women come forward.
Right. And, this story is a decade old. Reporting on it now, in the wake of the Me Too movement, does it have a different resonance? Do you think that could affect the outcome of all of these potential civil suits?
Well, the civil suits, it's hard to say. He has some very powerful attorneys, and he makes it very difficult for some of these girls to go public. As you can imagine, even after all these years, it's extremely painful. They feel that they were traumatized first by him, second by the criminal justice system that failed to prosecute him, third by the civil attorneys that he hired, and now here it is again, these lawsuits that are going forward. And so this has been a long haul, and a lot of them have been really traumatized by this whole 10-year process.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Alexander Acosta. He was, of course, not the only lawyer on the case. Kenneth Starr, for instance, was Epstein's lawyer. Starr, as we know, was the Whitewater special counsel. This story has really become fodder for conspiracy theorists. People want to know, were there other prominent men involved? So what is it about this case that you believe makes it so fascinating?
Well, I think just like our country is so divided today, this case is divided. I mean, I have equal response in emails and tweets from Republicans, Trump supporters, and Clinton supporters. There's no, just like with anything else, there's no political party persuasion as far as sexual abuse is concerned. There are probably guilty parties on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, in this case. But each side wants to point to the other side and say, look at what, I get an email, look at what Trump did. Why didn't you mention this? Look at what Clinton, he was on his plane a million times. Look at that. So there's been all these conspiracy, people have used this to sort of advance their own conspiracy theories.
Right. But, if you put all of that aside and you say, who cares who may or may not have been with Epstein when he was, performing these alleged crimes, there is so much evidence and so many women who are coming forward to talk about their experiences. It's hard to discount all of that. And it is very easy to look at this case as justice not served, especially for these victims. So, Julie, do you think that there is anything that these once girls, now women, can hope for in regards of seeing justice?
I think so. I think that there's things that, for example, that Congress can do to make sure that to beef up the Crime Victims' Rights Act, for example, so that it has more teeth, so that there's mechanisms so that this doesn't happen, that there's mechanisms that ensures that victims are informed when a person is ready to have a plea bargain, and he's basically their rights were completely obliterated as a result of this deal being done in secret. So there's certainly things that can be done if there's the will, the political will.
All right. Well, Julie Brown, thank you so much for reporting on this fascinating story.
Thank you.